The ultrasound image glowed on Madeline Porter's cracked phone screen as she sat on the edge of her bed in her tiny studio apartment. Outside, the November rain hammered against the window, matching the rhythm of her racing heart. 24 years old, with barely enough money for next month's rent, and now pregnant. The black and white image showed a tiny bean-shaped figure, impossibly small, yet suddenly the center of her universe. Her trembling thumb hovered over the send button for what felt like the 100th time that evening. "This is insane," she whispered to herself, pushing back a strand of copper hair. "He probably doesn't even have the same number." Jackson Hayes wasn't just any ex-boyfriend. Their summer romance 3 months ago had been brief but intense, a chance meeting at a charity gala where she'd been working as a server. What Madeline hadn't known then was that the charming man in the tailored suit who'd asked for her number was actually Jackson Hayes, the 35-year-old CEO of Hayes Innovations, a tech company valued at billions. She'd discovered his true identity only after their whirlwind romance had ended, when he suddenly had to leave for business in Tokyo, promising to call, but never doing so. The apartment's heater sputtered and died, making Madeline pull her threadbare sweater tighter around her shoulders. She'd already tried reaching out to Jackson twice after discovering her pregnancy last week, sending messages that had gone unanswered. This ultrasound image taken just hours ago was her last attempt. Her finger finally pressed send, attaching the image with a simple message. "I thought you should know." Immediately, regret washed over her. What was she thinking? A man like Jackson Hayes would probably assume she was after his money, another gold digger fabricating a pregnancy to cash in. The thought made her stomach turn. She wasn't after his wealth. She'd fallen for the man who'd talked passionately about changing the world through sustainable technology, who'd quoted poetry as they walked along the riverfront, who'd looked at her like she was the only person in the room. Madeline set her phone down and moved to the small kitchenette, filling a kettle for tea. Her job as an assistant at the local library barely covered her expenses, and her medical bills were already mounting. The doctor had been concerned about her blood pressure, suggesting bed rest and reduced stress, laughable advice for a single pregnant woman with no safety net. She had just poured the hot water over a tea bag when her phone vibrated against the wooden nightstand. Madeline froze, cup in hand, staring at the device as if it might explode. Slowly, she set down her tea and walked over to pick it up. The message was brief. "Where are you? J.H." Her hands trembled as she typed her address. Was he angry? Going to accuse her of lying? 3 dots appeared, indicating he was typing, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, another message came through. "I knew it was me. I'm sending a jet. Pack your things." Madeline nearly dropped her phone. A jet? Pack her things? The absurdity of it made her laugh nervously. People like her didn't get private jets sent for them. There had to be a mistake. She called the number, her heart in her throat. "Madeline." His voice was exactly as she remembered, deep, confident, with a warmth that had drawn her to him instantly that summer night. "Jackson, I wasn't expecting you to respond. I just thought you should know. I'm not asking for anything." The words tumbled out in a rush. "I've been searching for you for weeks," he said, his voice strained. "I lost my phone in Tokyo. By the time I got back to the States, you'd changed jobs, moved apartments. I couldn't find you." Madeline sank onto her bed, disbelief washing over her. "You were looking for me. Every day." There was a pause. "The jet will be at the regional airport in an hour. A car will pick you up in 30 minutes. Please come, Madeline. We need to talk." The call ended before she could respond. Madeline sat motionless, staring at the wall where the paint was peeling. Could she trust this? Trust him? The practical part of her brain screamed caution, but something deeper, perhaps the same intuition that had drawn her to him in the first place, told her this was real. Madeline looked around her apartment, at the second-hand furniture, the stack of past-due notices on the counter, the lone plant struggling by the window. If she stayed, she knew exactly what her future held. Struggle, hardship, difficult choices. If she went... The sound of her phone ringing again startled her. An unknown number. "Ms. Porter, this is Stephanie Ward, Mr. Hayes' assistant. I'm confirming the car will arrive at your location in 25 minutes. Is there anything specific you need for your comfort during the flight? The professional voice on the other end made this surreal situation suddenly concrete. This was happening. No, I'll be ready, Madeline managed to say. As she packed her meager belongings into a duffel bag, questions swirled in her mind. Why had Jackson disappeared? Why was he sending a jet instead of just meeting her somewhere in the city? And most importantly, what did he want now? The baby changed everything, but she couldn't allow herself to imagine a fairy tale ending. Life had taught her that happy endings weren't for people like her. Thunder cracked outside as Madeline zipped her bag closed. Through the rain-streaked window, she saw headlights approaching, a black town car pulling up to her building. The driver emerged with an umbrella and walked toward her entrance. Madeline took one last look at the ultrasound image on her phone screen. Whatever happened next would change her life forever. She placed a protective hand over her stomach, took a deep breath, and opened the door to face whatever future awaited. The private jet gleamed under the airport's floodlights, its sleek silhouette a stark contrast to the modest regional airport where Madeline stood. Rain continued to fall, but she barely noticed it under the large umbrella held by the driver who had escorted her across the tarmac. Her entire apartment could fit inside this aircraft, she thought, as she climbed the stairs, her duffel bag embarrassingly small and worn. "Welcome aboard, Miss." Porter, a flight attendant, greeted her with a professional smile. "Mr. Hayes is waiting for you." Madeline's heart hammered against her ribs as she stepped into the cabin. The interior was elegant, but not ostentatious, cream leather seats, polished wood accents and subtle lighting. At the far end, Jackson stood, his tall frame silhouetted against the window. He turned, and the sight of him sent a jolt through her system. 3 months hadn't changed him, the same intense blue eyes, strong jawline, and dark hair slightly tousled as if he'd been running his fingers through it. "Madeline," he said, crossing the distance between them in 4 long strides. He stopped short of embracing her, uncertainty flickering across his features. Up close, she noticed the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. "Thank you for coming." "I'm not sure I had much choice," she replied, suddenly aware of her faded jeans and second-hand sweater. "You sent a jet." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "I wanted to make sure you'd come. Please, sit down." The flight attendant took Madeline's bag and disappeared discreetly as Jackson guided her to a set of facing seats. Once they were settled, the engines hummed to life. "Where are we going?" Madeline asked, fastening her seatbelt. "My home in Vermont. It's private, secluded. We can talk without interruptions." He paused, studying her face. "You look tired. Have you been taking care of yourself?" The concern in his voice caught her off guard. "As well as I can," she answered honestly. "It's been challenging." Jackson's jaw tightened. "The doctor. Is everything okay with the—" His eyes dropped to her stomach, still flat beneath her sweater. "The baby is fine," Madeline said. 8 weeks along, but there are some concerns about my blood pressure." "Why didn't you contact me sooner?" There was an edge to his question. "I did," Madeline countered, feeling a flash of indignation. "Twice. You never responded." Jackson reached into his pocket and pulled out a smartphone. "This is my 3rd phone in 3 months. The first one I lost in Tokyo during a typhoon evacuation. The second was hacked. Corporate espionage. I got this one last week." He set it on the table between them. "I never got your messages, Madeline. I swear it." The aircraft lifted smoothly into the air, banking gently as it rose above the storm clouds. Madeline looked out the window at the city lights below, growing smaller by the second. "You said you were looking for me," she said, turning back to him. Jackson ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture she remembered so well. "After Tokyo, I came back expecting to call you, to continue what we started, but my phone was gone, and with it, your number. I went back to the restaurant where you'd been working, but they said you'd quit. Your old apartment building had new tenants. It was like you'd vanished." "I lost my job at the restaurant," Madeline explained. "The manager's son needed work, so suddenly my hours were cut until I couldn't afford to stay. I found the library position and a cheaper apartment across town." "Why did you change your social media accounts?" Madeline gave a bitter laugh. "Because after our time together, someone recognized you in a photo I'd posted. My inbox was flooded with messages calling me a gold digger, a social climber. I deleted everything." Understanding dawned on Jackson's face, followed by remorse. "I never considered how my position would affect you. I'm sorry." The flight attendant appeared with a tray of light refreshments, herbal tea, fresh fruit, and small sandwiches. Madeline realized she was ravenous and accepted the offering gratefully. "When did you find out?" Jackson asked after a moment of silence, watching her eat. 3 weeks ago, Madeline said between careful bites. "I'd been feeling unwell for a while, but I thought it was stress from the move, the new job. Then I realized I was late." Jackson nodded, his expression unreadable. "And you're certain it's yours?" Madeline set down her teacup with more force than intended. "Yes, I'm certain. There hasn't been anyone else." His cheeks flushed. "That's not what I meant. This is unexpected. For both of us," she said softly. They sat in silence as the plane cruised through the night. Madeline felt exhaustion washing over her, the events of the day catching up with her body. "You should rest," Jackson said, noticing her stifled yawn. "There's a bedroom in the back. We still have about an hour before we land." Madeline hesitated, then nodded. The flight attendant showed her to a small but luxurious bedroom compartment with a real bed. The absurdity of her situation hit her anew as she slipped off her shoes and lay down. Yesterday, she'd been counting pennies for prenatal vitamins. Today, she was on a private jet with the father of her child, a billionaire who claimed he'd been searching for her. Sleep came surprisingly quickly, but it was filled with unsettling dreams. In one, she was running through a maze of corporate offices, each door opening to reveal another conference room filled with people in suits who stared at her swelling belly with disapproval. In another, she held a crying baby while Jackson watched from behind a glass wall, his expression unreadable. She woke to a gentle knock. "Ms. Porter, we're beginning our descent." Disoriented, Madeline sat up. Through the small window, she could see moonlight reflecting off snow-covered mountains. The clock on the wall read 11:38 p.m. When she returned to the main cabin, Jackson was on his phone, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. "I don't care what the board thinks. Postpone the meeting. Yes, indefinitely. No, this is personal." He looked up, saw her, and ended the call. "Did you rest well?" "As well as can be expected," she said, settling back into her seat for landing. The plane descended toward a private airstrip, illuminated by lights that seemed to appear out of nowhere in the wilderness. As they touched down, Madeline glimpsed a large structure in the distance, a house nestled among the trees, windows glowing warmly against the night. "Welcome to Evergreen," Jackson said, following her gaze, "my refuge from the world." The aircraft came to a stop, and the door opened to reveal a crisp, cold night. Jackson offered his hand to help her up, and Madeline took it after a moment's hesitation. His touch was warm, familiar, and for a brief moment, she was transported back to their summer days, before she knew who he really was, before the pregnancy, before everything complicated. A black SUV waited on the tarmac. As Jackson guided her toward it, he kept his hand at the small of her back. Protective, perhaps possessive. The gesture sent conflicting emotions through Madeline. Part of her wanted to pull away, to assert her independence. Another part craved the security he represented. "Tomorrow," he said as they settled into the vehicle, "we'll talk about everything. The baby. The future. Tonight, you need proper rest." Madeline nodded, watching the moonlit forest pass by outside the window. One question burned in her mind, but she hesitated to ask it, afraid of the answer. Finally, as the SUV approached the house, a stunning modern structure of glass and timber, she found her voice. "Jackson," she said quietly, "why did you say, 'I knew it was me' when I sent the ultrasound? We haven't seen each other in months. You could have doubted, questioned." His gaze met hers, intense and unwavering. "Because despite everything, Madeline, I never stopped thinking about you, and I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Morning light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden patterns across Madeline's bed. For a moment, she lay disoriented, the luxurious sheets and mountain view a stark contrast to her studio apartment. Then reality rushed back. The ultrasound, Jackson's message, the private jet. She placed a hand protectively over her stomach, wondering what this day would bring. The guest suite Jackson had shown her to last night was larger than her entire apartment, with a bathroom featuring a marble shower and deep soaking tub. On the dresser sat a collection of new toiletries, a hairbrush, and even a set of prenatal vitamins. The thoughtfulness of this gesture wasn't lost on her. After showering, Madeline discovered a closet containing several outfits in her size, tags still attached. The presumption might have annoyed her under different circumstances, but practicality won out. Her own clothes were limited and worn. She selected a simple sweater dress in forest green and slipped it on, surprised by how perfectly it fit. A gentle knock at the door revealed a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair pulled into a neat bun. "Good morning, Ms. Porter. I'm Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper. Mr. Hayes asked me to show you to breakfast when you're ready." Madeline followed Mrs. Winters through the modernist house, a stunning blend of glass, wood, and stone that seemed to emerge organically from the mountainside. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed breathtaking views of snow-dusted forests and distant peaks. "It's beautiful here," Madeline commented, trying to calm her nerves. "Mr. Hayes designed it himself," Mrs. Winters replied with evident pride. "Said he wanted a place where he could think clearly, away from the noise of the city." They entered a sunlit dining area where Jackson stood looking out at the view, a coffee cup in hand. He turned at their approach, his eyes widening slightly as they took in Madeline in the green dress. "You look well," he said, setting down his cup. "Did you sleep okay?" "Better than I have in weeks," Madeline admitted, accepting the chair he pulled out for her. Mrs. Winters departed discreetly as another staff member served breakfast. A spread of fresh fruit, whole-grain toast, scrambled eggs, and a special herbal tea that Mrs. Winters had apparently prepared specifically for pregnancy. "You told your staff about the baby?" Madeline asked, surprised. "Mrs. Winters has been with my family since I was a child. She's more family than employee," Jackson explained, "but no one else knows. Not yet." They ate in awkward silence for several minutes before Jackson spoke again. "I've arranged for Dr. Eleanor Reeves to come this afternoon. She's one of the best obstetricians in the country." Madeline set down her fork. "You arranged a doctor without asking me?" Jackson had the grace to look abashed. "I'm concerned about your blood pressure. Dr. Reeves is discreet and excellent. If you prefer someone else—" "It's not about who the doctor is," Madeline interrupted. "It's about you making decisions for me without consultation." "You're right," Jackson conceded after a moment. "I should have asked. I'm used to solving problems efficiently." "This pregnancy isn't a problem to be solved," Madeline said, her voice quieter but firm. "And I'm not one of your employees or business ventures." Jackson ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture again. "I know that. I'm trying, Madeline. This is new territory for me." The vulnerability in his admission softened her response. "For me, too." After breakfast, Jackson gave her a tour of the property, the main house with its soaring architecture, the smaller guest cottage nestled among pines, and the state-of-the-art home office from which he apparently ran his empire when not at headquarters. "You can work from anywhere?" Madeline asked as they walked a cleared path through light snow. "Increasingly, yes. The board prefers me in New York, but I've been pushing for more flexibility." He glanced at her. "Especially now." The implication hung in the air between them. They reached a viewpoint overlooking a frozen lake below, mountains rising beyond. Jackson cleared snow from a bench, and they sat, breath clouding in the crisp air. "I have a proposition," he said finally. "Stay here until the baby is born. You'd have the best medical care, proper nutrition, rest, everything you need." Madeline stared at him. "Stay here for 7 months? You could have the entire guest cottage to yourself, complete privacy when you want it. And my job? My apartment?" "The library position pays barely above minimum wage, Madeline. As for the apartment," he hesitated. "I took the liberty of looking into your lease, your month-to-month." Anger flashed through her. "You investigated me. I wanted to understand your situation better." "My situation," she repeated, standing up. "My situation is that I'm pregnant, yes, but I'm still an independent person with agency and dignity. You can't just buy me and put me on a shelf somewhere convenient." Jackson stood too, frustration evident in his stance. "That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to take responsibility, to care for you both. By controlling everything, making decisions without me, looking into my private affairs. I was worried about you." His composure slipped, revealing genuine emotion. "Do you have any idea what it was like to receive that ultrasound after searching for you for weeks? To know you've been struggling alone, carrying my child while I—" He broke off, turning toward the view. Madeline watched his broad shoulders rise and fall with a deep breath. She understood his impulse to fix everything. It was probably what made him successful in business. But this wasn't business. This was their lives, their child. The moment was interrupted by the ping of Jackson's phone. He glanced at it, frowning. "I need to take this. Corporate crisis. Do you mind finding your way back? Just follow our footprints." Before she could answer, he was already walking away, phone to his ear, voice shifting into what she recognized as his CEO tone, authoritative, decisive. Madeline sat back down on the bench, suddenly exhausted. The peaceful landscape contrasted with her turbulent emotions. What did she want? Independence, yes, but was pride worth struggling through a high-risk pregnancy alone? And what about after the birth? What kind of future could she provide for their child on a library assistant's salary? She was still wrestling with these questions when she heard footsteps crunching in the snow. Expecting Jackson, she was surprised to see a woman approaching, tall, elegantly dressed in a cashmere coat, with sleek blonde hair and the kind of beauty that seemed effortless. "You must be Madeline," the woman said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "I'm Victoria Kensington, Jackson's fiancée." The world seemed to tilt beneath Madeline. Fiancée? Victoria's perfectly manicured hand emerged from her pocket, displaying a massive diamond ring. "We've kept it quiet from the press, corporate politics, you understand." Her gaze swept over Madeline assessingly. "Though I admit, when Jackson said he'd brought a pregnant ex to Evergreen for support, you're not what I pictured." Madeline felt as if she'd been doused in ice water. "He told you I'm pregnant?" "Of course. We don't keep secrets." Victoria sat beside her, uninvited. Jackson has always had a soft spot for charity cases. It's one of his more endearing qualities, if occasionally inconvenient. "I should go," Madeline said, standing abruptly, humiliation burning through her. "I never should have come here." Victoria's smile widened slightly. "That's probably best. The jet can take you back today. Jackson means well, but he's already provided for the child's future quite generously. There's really no need for ongoing entanglements." Madeline turned away, following the footprints back toward the house, tears threatening to spill. A fiancé. Of course, someone like Jackson would have been involved with someone suitable, someone from his world of wealth and privilege. What had she been thinking? She was halfway back when Jackson appeared on the path ahead, still on his phone. Seeing her face, he quickly ended the call. "Madeline, what's wrong?" "Congratulations on your engagement," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Victoria seems lovely." The color drained from Jackson's face. "Victoria is here, at Evergreen. She found me at the viewpoint, explained everything." Madeline tried to move past him. "I'd like to go back to the city now, please." Jackson caught her arm gently. "Madeline, wait. Victoria isn't my fiancée. She never was. She has a ring. She said you told her about the baby." "She's lying," Jackson said, his expression hardening. "Victoria is the daughter of my company's largest investor. We dated briefly 2 years ago. She's been persistent despite my disinterest." Madeline wanted to believe him, but doubt clouded her judgment. "Why would she be here then?" "That's what I intend to find out." He pulled out his phone. "Mrs. Winters, please escort Ms. Kensington off the property immediately. She is not welcome here." He looked back at Madeline, his eyes intense. "Come with me. There's something I need to show you." Jackson led Madeline through the house with determined strides, his jaw set in a hard line. They reached his home office, a spacious room with a wall of monitors and a massive oak desk. He closed the door behind them and moved to a sleek computer. 2 months ago, Victoria's father, Richard Kensington, attempted a hostile takeover of Hayes Innovations, Jackson explained, typing rapidly. "He nearly succeeded. Victoria has been trying to position herself as my partner, both personal and professional, for years. I've repeatedly made it clear I'm not interested." He pulled up an email and turned the screen toward Madeline. It was a restraining order against Victoria Kensington, dated 6 weeks earlier. "She's been stalking me," Jackson said quietly. "Showing up at my apartment, my office, charity events. The ring is fake, a prop in her delusion. As for knowing about your pregnancy," he ran a hand through his hair, "my security system should have alerted me when she entered the property. She must have hacked it somehow." Before Madeline could respond, there was a commotion outside, raised voices, the sound of something breaking. Jackson moved protectively in front of Madeline as the door burst open. Victoria stood there, her elegant composure gone, replaced by wild-eyed fury. "You can't dismiss me like some employee, Jackson. We're meant to be together. Everyone knows it." Mrs. Winters appeared behind her, looking distressed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes. She refused to leave. I've called security." "It's fine, Mrs. Winters," Jackson said calmly, though Madeline could see the tension in his shoulders. "Victoria, you need to leave now." Victoria's gaze fixed on Madeline, hatred blazing in her eyes. "You think he cares about you? About your baby? You're nothing to him. A summer fling. A novelty because you didn't know who he was. Once the novelty wears off, he'll pay you off and forget you ever existed." "That's enough." Jackson's voice was like steel. "You don't know anything about my feelings for Madeline." "I know everything about you," Victoria screamed. "I've dedicated years to understanding you, to becoming the perfect partner for you, and you throw it all away for this nobody." Two security guards appeared, flanking Victoria. She didn't resist, as they gently but firmly escorted her from the room, though her parting glare at Madeline sent a chill down her spine. When the disturbance faded, an uncomfortable silence fell between Jackson and Madeline. She sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. "I'm sorry you had to witness that," Jackson said quietly. "Victoria's father is using her instability to try to gain leverage over my company. I've been dealing with their manipulations for months." "Is that why you disappeared after Tokyo?" Madeline asked. "Corporate warfare?" Jackson nodded, moving to sit across from her. "The takeover attempt started while I was there. I lost my phone during the typhoon evacuation, then spent weeks fighting to keep control of my company. By the time I had breathing room to look for you..." He trailed off, looking genuinely pained. Madeline studied his face, searching for truth. "All this time, I thought you'd just lost interest, that I'd been naive." "Never," Jackson said firmly. "What we had was real, Madeline. At least it was for me." The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within her. Still, doubts lingered. "Your world is so different from mine, Jackson. Today proved that. Victoria might be extreme, but she's right about one thing. I don't belong here." "That's where you're wrong," Jackson said, leaning forward. "Do you know what Evergreen really is? It's not just my home. It's where I grew up, before the money, before Hayes Innovations." Madeline looked at him in confusion. "But this house is..." "New," he finished. "Built 5 years ago. But this land..." He gestured toward the window. "This belonged to my grandparents. They had a small cabin about half a mile from here. My mother grew up in that cabin, and after she married my father, we lived there too. I was 10 when my father's invention took off, changing our lives overnight." He stood, walking to the window. "I know what it's like to worry about heating bills, Madeline, to wear hand-me-downs and count pennies for groceries. My success didn't erase those memories. It gave me the means to honor them by helping others." This revelation shifted something in Madeline's perception of him. Not just a privileged CEO, but someone who understood struggle, who had lived it. "The doctor will be here soon," Jackson said softly. "Will you stay, at least for the examination?" Madeline nodded, still processing everything. Dr. Reeves arrived an hour later, a distinguished woman with a calm presence who examined Madeline thoroughly and with great sensitivity in a room Jackson had apparently equipped with medical supplies specifically for this purpose. "Your blood pressure is indeed concerning," Dr. Reeves said afterward as they sat in the living room. "Not immediately dangerous, but it needs monitoring. I recommend reduced stress, regular checkups, and proper nutrition." "What about her returning to work?" Jackson asked. Dr. Reeves looked thoughtful. "I wouldn't recommend it at this stage. The combination of physical demands and stress could pose risks to both mother and child." After the doctor left, Madeline stood by the window watching snow begin to fall gently outside. The medical advice had removed one option. She couldn't return to her library job, not if it might harm the baby. But the alternative, staying here, accepting Jackson's help, required a leap of faith she wasn't sure she could make. "I have a compromise," Jackson said, joining her at the window. "The guest cottage. It's fully furnished, completely separate from the main house. Stay there, let me provide the medical care you need, but maintain your independence. No strings, no expectations." "And after the baby is born?" "That's for us to figure out together," he said. "One step at a time." The offer was tempting, a middle ground that would provide for her health while respecting her autonomy. Still, something held her back. "Why, Jackson? Why go to all this trouble? You could have just arranged child support through lawyers." Jackson was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "The night we met, you asked me what I was passionate about, remember? I talked about sustainable technology changing the world, but the truth is, for all my success, my life has been empty in ways that matter. When we spent those weeks together for the first time in years, I felt something real. He turned to face her directly. I'm not asking for a relationship, Madeline. I'm asking for a chance to be present for this child and to see if what I felt with you could grow into something lasting. But even if it doesn't, I want to be a father to our baby. A real father, not just financial support. The sincerity in his eyes moved her. Before she could respond, Mrs. Winters appeared with a concerned expression. Mr. Hayes, the road down the mountain is closing due to the snowstorm. The weather service is predicting 3 feet by morning. Jackson looked at Madeline. It seems the decision about staying tonight has been made for us. The next morning dawned blindingly white, the world transformed by deep snow. Madeline woke to find a note from Jackson saying he had emergency conference calls but would join her for lunch. She spent the morning exploring the house, eventually finding a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a cozy window seat overlooking the snow-covered landscape. It was there that Jackson found her, curled up with a novel she hadn't had time to read in months. "You found my favorite room," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "It's wonderful," Madeline admitted. "I could stay here all day." "You can," he said simply, "for as long as you want." Over lunch they really talked about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears for the future. Jackson spoke of the pressure of running a global company, the loneliness of success. Madeline shared her struggles as an orphan who had aged out of foster care, her determination to build a stable life. "I've made a decision," she said finally, as they finished their meal. "I'll stay in the guest cottage, at least until the baby is born, but I need to contribute, to have purpose." "Of course," Jackson agreed readily. "What did you have in mind?" "I have a degree in English literature that I've never fully used. I could help organize your library, perhaps start cataloging your corporate archives." She hesitated. "And maybe we could see where this goes, between us." The smile that spread across Jackson's face was worth every doubt she'd overcome to get to this moment. 6 months later, as spring transformed the mountainside from white to vibrant green, Madeline sat in the garden of the guest cottage, though she spent most nights in the main house now, in Jackson's arms. Her rounded belly caught the warm sunshine as she reviewed the final draft of Hayes Innovations' new corporate history she'd compiled from their archives. Jackson appeared at the garden gate, home early from a board meeting in New York. In his hand was a small velvet box. "I'm not proposing," he said, reading her startled expression as he sat beside her. "Not yet, this is something else." Inside the box was a key, old-fashioned iron. "What's this for?" Madeline asked, turning it in her palm. "The cabin," Jackson said. "My grandparents' cabin. I've had it restored." He took her hand. "Whatever happens between us, Madeline, I want our child to know where they come from, both sides of their heritage, not just the success, but the struggle that made it possible." Tears filled Madeline's eyes as she squeezed his hand. 9 months ago, she'd been alone in a cramped apartment, sending an ultrasound to a man she thought had forgotten her. Now, against all odds, she'd found not just security but understanding, respect, and something very much like love. "I'd like to see it," she said softly. As they walked hand in hand through the forest to the restored cabin, Madeline reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Not a fairy tale, but something better. A real connection between two people who had found each other against the odds, who were building something authentic despite their differences. Inside her, their daughter kicked vigorously, as if agreeing with her thoughts. Jackson felt it too, his hand resting protectively over hers on her belly. His smile, so rare when they'd first met, now increasingly frequent, warmed her more than the spring sunshine. "Welcome home," he whispered, and opened the cabin door to their future.